This past Monday, as we were driving to the men's and the ladies' studies, we hit a detour. I don't know if that detour is still there, but we were coming up Scatterfield Road, and it was closed at the train tracks. And we had to turn around, and we had to go around the tracks and go down 32nd Street, over Columbus Avenue. And since I don't know where I'm going once I get over there, I just found a street, and it connected eventually to Scatterfield Road again. When my wife was on the way home from work today with Sam, she got detoured. She was taking 465, and there was another accident, Allisonville Road, and she had to take 82nd Street and cut on over to 69 and went on a detour. When we were on our way to church tonight, there was something going on down the street, so I had to take the back way instead of taking 69 and go up past Pendleton High School and come up. And how many of you like detours? It throws us off, right? Throws us off schedule. We generally don't like it. It's inconvenient. We kind of get irritated about it and complain. Well, sometimes life takes us on a detour. And some detours are avoidable, and some detours are not. Had I known that the road was closed on Monday, then I would have avoided the detour in the first place, right? Save myself some time. But sometimes you don't know, and you just can't avoid it. Well, in the book of Deuteronomy, which is what we began studying in the adult class here tonight, the first couple of chapters tells us about a detour that Israel made. Under the leadership of Moses, Israel had left Egypt. They were en route to the promised land of Canaan. And you would have thought they would have trusted God's power to get them there. They had witnessed the 10 plagues. They had walked across a divided sea. They'd been fed with manna. However, the people began to doubt if God's plan was right, and they complained until God finally took them on a detour. And it was a detour that they could have avoided if they would have trusted God's plan. But God made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years. It's a long detour. What's interesting is that Moses remarks in Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 2 that the journey from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea, which was kind of spy central, it should have taken 11 days. But here they were 38 years later, still waiting to arrive. Let's try to break that down into something that maybe is easier to understand. Let's say I ask my wife, let's say we're eating down the street at, Olive Garden, and I say, how long does it take to get to the church? About 11 minutes. And it takes us 38 days to get there. That's a big difference. 11 minutes and 38 days. 11 days versus 38 years, that's a big difference. And so 38 years later, they're still waiting to arrive. Now, that got me to thinking about a spiritual lesson we can learn. Do you realize when you try to go about living your own way, you fail to trust God, that you're taking your spiritual walk on a voluntary detour? You're slowing down your progress. When the churches of Galatia started trusting in their keeping of the law of Moses, and they were binding circumcision on people, Paul said to them, you ran well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? So you went on a detour, it seems like here. Their spiritual life took a detour. The binding of requirements like circumcision became a stumbling block in the church, slowed down their progress. So they needed to quit. Now, you can't change every detour. Sometimes you face sickness in life and you can't control that. Sometimes cars pull out in front of you and you get in accidents and you can't control that. Sometimes we have deaths among our loved ones and family, and we can't control those detours. So sometimes circumstances take us on those routes, and we just have to trust God's will as we go on them. But some detours are our own fault, and those are the ones that I want you to think about now. For example, when you do something in your marriage that breaks your spouse's trust, and your marriage is not where it ought to be, you did that. You broke that. You slowed the progress, and you took the marriage on a detour. When you have a poor attitude, and you gossip and put down your brothers and sisters over petty complaints, then you injure unity and you hurt your fellowship and you put your relationship with other brethren on a detour. And it sometimes takes a while to get back on track once we've blown that off course. When we develop lazy habits, when we quit praying, when we quit making time to read our Bibles, quit making God our priority, then you may very well be putting your walk of faith on detour. One of the things the Hebrew writer says is that by now you ought to be teachers, but I still have to go back over first principles because you are not spiritually where you need to be. You haven't worked and chewed on some meat in the Word of God. They were on a detour. They were too slow in their progress. And so we're off track. The prodigal son took his life on a detour. He chose to walk away from the blessings of the Father. He chose to go and live life his own way, and he ended up in a pigsty far away from home. But here's the good news, is that he got back on the path to home, and he had a father who was willing to accept him back. And you can put yourself on a detour, but you can get yourself back on the road home too, and you can be confident you have a God who will forgive and be merciful. So where's your spiritual life right now? Are you slowing down your spiritual progress because you've quit trusting in God, you've chosen your own route? Well, don't live your life so that years from now you're telling yourself, I really should be a lot further along in my spiritual walk and knowledge and in my relationships with my brethren, but I've wasted too much of my time detouring.